The banning of stubby hammerers and commoner is not insignificant for Fi. Now sure, there have always been two legitimate ways to build him. Of course, the full Draconic build, leaning hard into stubbies, but there was also the less explosive Kodachi Rupture line. The stubbies build clearly had the advantage, but with the ban, I now believe the Kodachi Rupture line is the better play. So today, I'm covering my updated Fi commoner list leaning hard into the Rupture playline. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. To all my commoner friends, thank you. Together, you have completely changed the narrative around commoner. Engagement scores are up roughly 3x on commoner videos. But it's not time to pump the brakes. If you enjoy this video and other commoner content, like, comment, and subscribe to show not only myself, but the other content creators that this format matters. You all rock, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood commoner folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast for, that's right, another commoner video, kind of as a follow-up to the recent B&R that impacted the commoner format, right? With the banning of stubbies and the banning of Amulet of Ice. So this is one of course, a two-part series, as you would expect, covering new lists on the two heroes I believe to be most impacted by the bans. Okay, now sure, with stubbies, we also see impact to Chane, but I don't believe it fundamentally changes his playline. But with Fi, I do. I think that this significantly changes his playline, and here's why. So as I mentioned in the intro, there have always been kind of two ways to build him. That's not just in commoner, that's in classic constructed. But in commoner format, with stubbies being legal, trying to go as wide as possible to get bonus off of that one turn is very, very, very strong. Now, Fi has obviously been a very well-performing hero because of this card, and it makes sense, but it does lean hard into it. It morphs how you have to build your deck because you want to go wide, right? You're running things like Flame Call Awakening so that you can pull a Phoenix Flame. You might be running 2 Phoenix Flames, whereas in a lot of normal Fi builds, you might only run 1. You're even, in some cases, going to run cards like Inflame, which normally you wouldn't. But again, you're trying to go wide, and each one of those pulls another card, and it's kind of like a double strike in a way, kind of. But you see where I'm going with this, right? You build your deck to lean hard into that one turn. Now, the advantage of the Rupture line is that it's a lot more consistent. You're running your Kodachis, but you need to very much change how your deck builds, not just in running Rupture cards. Obviously, you're going to run Lava Burst in both builds, but you might now run cards like Breaking Point or even Searing Touch, right? Searing Touch is actually pretty good in the commoner format because it actually is one of the few sources of just straight damage that can close games. But you also have to change your deck, not just with those includes, but you also have to run a higher cost curve because you're going to be running more, you're going to want to run more blues. You need blue zeros specifically for your Kodachis. But it also changes something else to your advantage, right? The advantage of the Rupture is that you don't need what I call a fire starter, right? What I call fire starters are draconic, either 0/3s or 1/4s or 1/3s, I suppose. But they're draconics with natural go again, non-dependent go again to start your fire, right? But now you look at something like a Bettering Thorns, right? Bettering Thorns is tough to play in like the draconic package because it of itself isn't it, right? You can't just do Bettering Thorns into like Searing Emberblade because then you wouldn't have go again, right? So you have to figure out some other way to manage that with Bettering Thorns. But now if you skew away from that and you're really just using Fi's Phoenix Flame thing kind of as a bonus in the Rupture line, I'm saying, it really gets you a lot more flexibility. Now, you might ask the question, well, since I'm skewing towards that, why not just play Ira? I think that's a completely legitimate argument, right? Which is why, obviously, he's been playing the Stubbies thing, but he had Stubbies. But he does have access to something that Ira doesn't, and that's the Draconic cards, right? And there are some, like, again, Lava Burst, very good. Breaking Point, even Searing Touch. She, being Ira, does not have access to stuff like that, right? So to that end, let's go ahead and bring up my deck. Now the deck list is below. I'm sure many of you have clicked on it at this point. But let's go ahead and talk through this in terms of why I've made some of the choices that I have, right? So Again, we are not running, obviously stubbies is not legal, so I've gone with breaking scales. This is kind of a interesting call, I admit, because there's not very many combo cards in here. Most of the combo cards that are in here are actually, like your soul beads or stuff like that are actually at the end. And many of them only swing for one, but it is there. So you're not necessarily going to, we've gotten pretty used to breaking scales like to come over on a breakpoint or something like that to trigger a mask. That's not necessarily going to really work with you here. But again, if they, they throw one out and then you've already blocked with it and they don't block it, you could slide it in for another 2 or something like that. Okay. Now we are running the Kodachis. I do not, if we go down to the inventory, do not even have the Searing Blade in here, right? That's not the play for this. We're going for, again, more of a traditional-esque ninja type build, but obviously going for the 4 wide so that you can get your Rupture. Right, so we have Mask of 3 Tails. This card is pretty crazy good in the commoner format. Non-sequential, just any 3 hits. You can get a draw off of it one time. I am running Sash of Sandakai. There's a very real argument for Vest of the First Fist if that's something you wanted to do. It could help you. Do remember, I think Vest of the First Fist sometimes is a trap when you're trying to run Kodachis because you still have to have the 0 in the drink in order to get your Kodachis go again. And I've screwed that up before. I have, right? So just, again, if that's what you want to run, you could run Vest of the First Fist. I like Sash of Sandakai just because it's on demand when I need it that one time. And then obviously Snappies, I don't think that one is really up for much debate. Now, the deck itself, we have Bittering Thorns. We have Blaze Headlong. I do want to remind Blaze Headlong is just red card, right? So you can do that off of a Bittering Thorns. All it has to be is red. We do have Rainbow Brand with Cinderclaw here that does give your Kodachi Draconic. Well, it gives your next one Draconics, but in many cases it can be your Kodachi, right? So what that does is it obviously lets you get one more link in to potentially and get your Phoenix Flame out, hopefully for free, with something else in hand. If you have 2, you get it. I don't need to walk you through that one, right? Maybe it costs you 1, but if it's floating, it's floating. Okay. We then have the 3 here, which go through Breaking Point, right? This is a 1/5 threatening arsenal. There's not a lot of stuff in this format that threatens arsenal, so that's very good. Lava Burst is pretty self-explanatory in Phi. And then let's go down to Searing Touch. So again, this one also blocks 3. Most of these are effectively, the Rupture cards are effectively combo cards in terms of how they're treated in terms of the block, right? Remember, your combo cards generally block for 3, whereas your combo starters block for 2. The Rupture cards are kind of in that same vein, no pun intended there, with Lava Vein and all that. But yeah, so Searing Touch for 1, it only comes for 3, but it throws 2 unblockable. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I shouldn't say unblockable because it's preventable, but you understand what I mean, right? Lava Vein Loyalty. This one is one of the few that actually blocks for 3, so I have red and blue here. I have a single leg tap to balance out the 1 Phoenix Flame that I'm running. That really just feeds into the fact that, we have Rising Knee Thrust, which is a blue. You will notice up here, if you go to the top, I'm running 10 blues. And it's a little low, like for this type of thing. I think you might want to be running 11. So you can play with that. But again, with the number of 0/3 going, right? So we have Brand, we have Ronin, we have Rising, right? We have a lot of 0/3s that have goes. So, on top of our 1/4s. So I think we're okay. But, we could get in a pinch. But then again, remember, you just block. There's enough 3 blocks in here that I think you can kind of hold your line. All right, so then we're into, I already mentioned Rising and Ronin. I do have Sink Below in here. I have red and blue, Soul Bead Strike, 2 Salt the Wounds, 2 Raising Knees, and then 2 Wounding Blows. Again, so you can see we're skewing very much away from like going the all Draconic, because, it's very traditional in Fight to see like Rising Resentment Blue, maybe Ronin Renegade Blue, but at the very least like Rising Blue, something like that to give you more Draconic. But again, we're not searing here, right? We're going for Kodachi package. So you want 0s, you want blues that block for 3, right? So Wounding Blow, perfect in that. Rising Knee Thrust as a thing. It actually works well with leg tap. If you can get it, then it's a 3 with go again. So it can happen. It can happen. I do want to say one thing I was toying around with was actually 2 leg taps and 1 Salt the Wound. I ended up on Salt the Wound, but that is certainly something you could swap if you find yourself in a spot where maybe you don't have necessarily what you want. But remember, Salted Wound also blocks for 3. So that is ultimately what led me to that decision. Right now for poppers, I have Brutal Assault and I have Stony Wooten Hog. Both of these are actually an argument for running Best of the First Fist. They're not in the main board. They're really only for the popper matches. But there is an argument there for running Best of the First Fist with these. Because remember, you're not doing necessarily the Ira thing because you don't get the +1 on second swing. Right? And then I do have Null Gloves, Null Robe, and then Tide Flippers. Right? You'll notice the one that we are planning to run all the time is Mask of the Three Tails for just the constant pressure there with that one, or with what that does and what it threatens, and it's pretty good. It's absolutely pretty good. Right, so again, the overall strategy here is really pretty simple, right? Some sort of, I mean, you can start the line with Kodachis, you can. No reason not to, unless you have brands, right? I shouldn't say no reason not to. There are cases in which you wouldn't do that, right? I think if you have Bettering Thorns, you always open up with Bettering Thorns because then they have to worry about Blaze Headlong somewhere along the way or something like that, right? But, you know, the play pattern here is really pretty simplistic. Brand, Kodachi, maybe 1, or you're rupturing at that point, right? It's really not that hard to get to 4 when you have 2 Kodachi stabs. It's really not. So that's the play pattern, and that's the deck. I do think, I mean, again, I spoke to it quite a bit earlier, so I won't sell you too much more on it. But I do think that this now is, I think Rupture is superior to Go Wide Draconic, but probably only by a little bit. But I do think that with the loss of Stubbies, it's pretty impactful to Fi. So I think he has to change to this playstyle, because this playstyle, again, was a little bit below. And now I think it's a little bit above the alternative, at least in this format. So anyway, that's the deck. That's the list. Thanks, folks, for joining me for the Commoner video. Give this a like, sub, all that good stuff. Nothing else, folks. Go Commando.